for joining us. So your overall assessment of the stats presented this morning, particularly when it comes to sexual offences and crimes against women and children.
Thank you, Nikki. We're very unhappy with the stats that were presented this morning. And there are some very basic reasons for this. Firstly, if we think about one of the major contributors in terms of violence against women and gender-based violence in general, domestic violence, statistics for domestic violence are still largely invisible in the manner in which the South African Police Services reports these crimes. We never get statistics on domestic violence, and this absence, I think, is conspicuous. Secondly, it's very frustrating that year to year the statistics are not reported in a consistent manner. So whereas, for example, last year the statistics told us that there was a certain proportion of women who were the victims of sexual offences, we don't have that figure this year in the stats. All we have is an overall figure for sexual offences. And generally speaking, I think people are pleased that this figure seems to have gone down, even though it is by a very, very small amount, being 0.4%. But from our perspective, this is actually bad news. You might recall last year when we discussed the release of the crime statistics, we spoke about the massive numbers of underreporting and levels of underreporting when it comes to crimes against women, and particularly when it comes to rape and other sexual offences. And so we know that there is underreporting. We know this from both research, and we know it as well because the organizations that work on the ground with these victims experience this on a daily basis. And so the fact that the number is going down is not necessarily telling us that these crimes are going down. It could also be telling us that underreporting is in fact increasing. And so overall, I feel the statistics are not very helpful in helping us to determine whether our programs that we've got in place and whether our interventions are having any effect on the levels of sexual violence against women and against children.
A lot I want to delve into what you've just said. Expand for us on what you mean by the stats for domestic violence are invisible. Would you like to see a specific category that details just that?
I certainly would like to see that, and that kind of information is collected at a station level, and it would be relatively easy to report on. But it appears that every year the categories of crime that are reported on seems to change. Very slightly sometimes, and sometimes there's a very obvious or glaring category that is missing. And I think certainly when we're talking about gender-based violence, and we know and we recognize that gender-based violence is a big problem in the country.
News that moves. eNCA.com.